Ryan Burns joining us from Gopher Illustrated. Please join him there for the best in Minnesota football coverage. Ryan, you know what the national narrative is. You can go to any division in college football, and there's an argument over Clemson, Florida State, Ohio State, Penn State. Even Alabama seems to be getting some challenges from Auburn and LSU in terms of media perception of what could happen. Not so in the Big Ten West. This is a default Wisconsin division. Everybody's picking Wisconsin. And then you've got Illinois and Purdue at the bottom. And you've got this collection of teams that are expected to go 8-5, basically, between Minnesota, Northwestern, Nebraska, and Iowa. Do you see any way that Minnesota, and you mentioned the Leidner meltdown in the fourth quarter against Wisconsin last year. I don't think people realize how close the Gophers were to winning the Big Ten Western Division. Do you see, despite the losses of personnel on both sides of the ball, Minnesota possibly challenging Wisconsin?
Absolutely. Is there a plausible scenario? I can tell you that Minnesota is 8-0 going into a very important game in November against Michigan. Absolutely. You have 3 non-conference games against a terrible Buffalo team who PJ's Western Michigan squad beat 39-0 last year. Then Minnesota plays an Oregon State team that I thought was going to be much improved. On the road, it's going to be a 9 p.m. Central start, so Minnesota's going to have to adjust to that. But this is an Oregon State team that just lost by 31 points to Colorado State on the road, a Colorado State team that Minnesota beat last season as well. So then they finish off the non-conference with a very dangerous Middle Tennessee State team. I don't think folks realize how powerful that offense is. At least they have a very good quarterback coming back, and then they have an All-American wide receiver by the name of Richie James. So that's a very potent offense that plays into the weaknesses of Minnesota's defense. So if Minnesota is able to escape 3-0, which I think they have a good chance to do, the first 4 games of their Big Ten schedule really don't give you any hesitation. They have a home game against Maryland. They have a home game against Illinois, home game against Michigan State, and they're on the road at Purdue. Again, Illinois and Purdue aren't going to be very good. Maryland, I think, is still very young, and I don't think they have – obviously they've been recruiting extremely well, but I think their best talent is still too young to really make an impact. And then the question mark is, what is Michigan State going to be? They were a 4-win team a year ago. They have a very tough stretch heading into Minnesota, including a Michigan game right before Minnesota. So, again, could Minnesota be 7-0 theirs? They have 3 out of their first 4 Big Ten games at home. Their only road game is going to be at Purdue. Absolutely. And then you head down to Iowa, who just finally named their starting quarterback today. And that's going to be a theme in the Big Ten West is Nebraska is replacing a quarterback. What does post-Tommy Armstrong look like? What does post-C.J. Beathard at Iowa look like? What does post-Mitch Leidner look like at Minnesota? Wisconsin's breaking in a full-time quarterback from their 2-quarterback system a year ago. Purdue and Northwestern, I believe, are the only 2 Big Ten West teams with a returning quarterback. So once we start to get into November, it could be very interesting for Minnesota. I don't ultimately think they have the firepower on offense and in their back 4 to really compete this year. But again, heading into that Iowa game at Iowa City where Minnesota hasn't won in 18 years, it could be very interesting. It could be a 7-0 Minnesota team. And again, once a college football team gets rolling, as you know, crazier things have happened.
Ryan, you probably hear this more than I do, but people consider this division to be very boring because of the style of play and the lack of sex appeal because you don't have the Clemsons and Florida States and the elite teams. But I find it fascinating. I love this division. I think it's classic Big Ten football, and I love to know that I don't know that there's an elite team and that 4 or 5 teams could be in the mix for the division championship. I think it's fascinating.
It's been that way for the last 2-3 years. Once you get into November, teams such as Wisconsin and Minnesota have been competing. Nebraska's been in there. Iowa's been in there. Until someone can unseat Wisconsin and until someone can figure out how Wisconsin finally breaks for a season, because it seems perennially they're just going to win 8, 9, 10 games, no matter what the system is, because they just have such a great amount of talent on their offensive line. They're able to just really grind teams to death, especially in the second half, especially in November when things get cold. Wisconsin just seems to continue to beef up. So until somebody can unseat Wisconsin and figure out how to break that system, I think they have to be considered the favorite. But right behind them is, again, the last 2-3 seasons heading into the last week or the last 2 weeks, someone else has had a chance to really unseat Wisconsin. They just haven't been able to take that next step. Now, is this the year? Is it Northwestern with Justin Jackson and Clayton Thorson? Is it Iowa breaking in a brand new quarterback? Is it Nebraska breaking in a brand new quarterback? Or is it Minnesota in year 1 getting that energy that PJ Fleck has? I think it's a very interesting storyline, especially heading into this fall.